the f? Thank you all for coming to this.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Backlot Banter. My name is Tucker Hazel. Today I'm joined by a demon I just can't seem to get rid of, Tanner Dykstra, and today we're here to talk about Beetlejuice. And today we're going to review that movie. Tanner, we have seen Beetlejuice, and we're here to share our thoughts on it. But of course, if you have seen the titular film, we're not going to say it too much.
No, yeah.
I guess I've already said it more than three times.
You said it 4 times already.
Yeah, it would have happened already. You can join our Discord. The link is in the description. You can leave a like and a comment on this video. But Tanner, this movie has been oddly anticipated, and I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on it as someone who has seen so many Tim Burton movies, and I would say maybe isn't a fan of him.
No, I think, especially because much of his output in our lifetime has been subpar, let's say, to put it nicely. Yeah. And this has long been touted as like Tim Burton's return. Yeah. He's back. Okay. Yeah. Burton returns.
Yes.
And I mean,
Burtman.
Should we just
Burtman returns.
That's very good.
Yeah.
Should we just roll right into it? Join the Discord link in the description.
I already did that.
Did you do that already? I zone out.
Beetlejuice in his mind.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so I think, Tucker, by the way, for a rule, we've already referred to the title of the film. We cannot refer to the man, the character, the demon, more than 3 times.
Sure, fair enough. Yeah, the movie title doesn't count.
Yeah, exactly. So, Tucker, this film, entitled Beetlejuice Beetlejuice,
yes, I
was anticipating it because I heard such good things about it. And at the end of the day, my feelings are, it's pretty good.
Yeah,
pretty good.
It's
like
good.
Burton's best movie in probably 10, 15 years. Yeah. I think you can still kind of see his sloppier modern tendencies peeking through here, and especially the story structure, I think. But I think the cast is really giving it their all. Yeah. I remember seeing some interviews in the lead up to this film. Catherine O'Hara, especially, I think, was sort of harping on, we really wanted to make it feel as though, not phoning it in, feel as though we were just making a sequel in like the 80s, effectively. Yeah. And I think the cast really feels like that, especially a lot of the returning cast are really doing a good job.
Yeah, I think this is a good movie. I think that it feels imbalanced and it feels like it's snowballing its pace at certain moments, but which is funny because I also think a biggest problem with this movie is that it loses like steam in like starting the third act is fine, but like starting the third act, it feels very slow. But this movie is kind of balancing a lot of plates. It's like if Beetlejuice had like 20 hands, he was trying to balance 20 plates.
There's just a lot of like storyline.
Oh, I referred to the guy again. Okay, we can do it one more time. One more strike.
So what was I saying here, Tucker?
A lot of balancing.
There's a lot of balancing, a lot of story ideas, clearly, that Burton and co. had trying to put into this film. The marriage subplot with Monica Belucci, and then the marriage subplot with Justin Theroux and Winona Ryder, and then Jenna Ortega and her father. Yeah,
Jenna Ortega and her boyfriend. Willem Dafoe.
There's just a lot of
O'Hara.
Yeah, exactly.
The funeral
thing. The funeral with Catherine O'Hara and Jeffrey Jones's character, which I want to talk about because I think it's very funny. I think there's just a lot of things up in the air, and you're bouncing so much between all of the stories that it doesn't feel like we have a sense of forward momentum a lot of the time. And the first Beetlejuice is like 90 minutes. He also doesn't show up in this film or the first film until a long way through the film. Yeah. But in the first one, it feels like we're really like on a roller coaster ride to that point, and then we go off the rails once Michael Keaton is introduced.
Yeah. I don't really want to start with too much criticism of this movie, though, because at the end of the day, I think it ends up working for the most part, mostly because it's just funny. It's just a funny movie.
It's funny.
There are just a lot of really good comedic timing bits here where you've got a cast of actors that have been doing this for a long time. Most of them are returning characters. The ones that are added fit very nicely into that plot. I think that as a legacy sequel, we've seen so many of these movies where character you recognize from the past comes back and has a child. I think this works great for that. I think that Jenna Ortega continues that legacy very well, and the dynamic that she brings to not believing in ghosts is kind of as with these legacy sequels, a good in for the modern audience who may not have seen Beetlejuice at all, or in 20, 30 years.
Or really only know about it as like a cultural artifact in a way, sort of like this cult classic that it has come now.
Definitely. But I do think that the biggest problem is that it's spinning too many plates, but when you zero in on any of those given plates, any of those given ideas, I think they're good.
I think so too.
I would watch any given of those plots if they had been given more time and attention. I just think there are too many of them to give them each attention, and so by the end of the film, all the storylines come crashing together, and some of them are just like kind of whisper off in the wind. You're like, eh.
Yeah, I mean, like, if we want to zero in on the central plot of this film, which is Winona Ryder, Justin Theroux, Jenna Ortega, Catherine O'Hara. Okay, this sort of like
the plot is the characters.
They return to whatever the name of the town is.
Yeah, Winter Springs,
Winter River, or something like that. Yeah. Because their Jeffrey Jones's character, their father Charlie Dietz, or Richard Dietz, I think actually, has died. He was eaten by a shark after a plane crash, which is a very interesting sequence if you know the sort of reasons why they couldn't bring Jeffrey Jones back for this film for obvious reasons. Yeah. They do like a stop motion thing, and then whenever the character is shown, he is just he has a giant shark bite that takes off the top part of his body, which is a cool effect, and there's lots of cool effects in this film as I want to speak on. But no, I mean, I think that like central core cast works. They have this dynamic, this inherent charisma in all of them. Their characters are so clear cut into what the point of them is supposed to be. Definitely. I mean, like Winona Ryder and Catherine O'Hara don't really drop the ball. Like, they have this sort of tenuous relationship now. 30 years on as stepmother and daughter, and. They've
definitely like gotten used to each other. And
they still take jabs, but I mean, there is an understanding between them as they try to deal with the two newer and more dynamic characters in Jenna Ortega and Justin Theroux.
Yeah. Now, can I say something without anybody getting too mad at me?
Okay, here we go.
I think Winona Ryder is the worst part of this movie.
Interesting.
I think that she just has just like this one look on her face the entire time. She's like this, and then she's like and then she's like oh. And I just think it's really flat. I don't know what it is about the direction or her performance that led to it for me feeling very one note. But whenever she showed up on screen, I felt like she was operating within a really limited range of emotions. No matter what she's reacting to, whether she's supposed to be sad or scared or frightened or upset or whatever, she's just kind of like this the whole time. She's just like her eyebrows are as high as they can go. And I didn't find her particularly compelling. I think that the characters around her bring out the best in her performance when she has to interact with Jenna Ortega or with Catherine O'Hara specifically. And Justin Theroux is very funny. But she is kind of an unchanging character.
Yeah,
I found that to be pretty frustrating because she is the main character of the movie.
I mean, she's the returning Lydia Dietz, obviously. The returning Lydia Dietz. I like how I phrased
as opposed to the other ones.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so I see where you're coming from. I think that's like just kind of like Winona Ryder's sort of screen presence, her trying to recapture this Tim Burton sort of feel.
I think it also just might be that I haven't seen Winona Ryder in a movie in a long time. That's fair. So my mental idea of what her range is or her capabilities as an actor is mostly her as a child, frankly, or much younger.
I mean, I think most modern audiences would be familiar with her from Stranger Things, which that's kind of
didn't know she was on that.
That's kind of her mode in Stranger Things as well. As like, oh, my son, what happened to my son? Why is my son acting so strange? But yeah, I mean, she kind of has
this one. Jenna Ortega's like, why is my mom acting so strange? My mom.
Yeah. But I think you're right, Tucker. She is at her best, and I think all of this cast is at their best when they're interacting with one another.
Yeah.
And there's just quite a few funny bits in this, and like when Jenna Ortega is like confused why her mom is doing this, or Catherine O'Hara is confused why her stepdaughter is doing this. Doing this is referring to, of course, like this rushed marriage with Justin Theroux happening in 2 days on Halloween or whatever. Like they crank up the zaniness of this all. Absolutely. And I think it works.
Yeah, and let's talk about the balance in another element of this film, which is the balance between the real world elements and the underworld elements. Does it have a name? It seems like it would have some sort of wacky, crazy name, but I guess it doesn't. Yeah. I think that balance is interesting. In that actually a lot more of the movie takes place in the overworld as it is.
Yeah.
And the parts that are in the underworld and the afterlife, I think, are where the movie really is at its best. Obviously, in terms of production design, and the music is going much crazier down there, and you've got crazy guys in the background and fun little gimmicks and things. That the core world, the real world, is lacking in. But for me, it's the balance between the filmmaking that I find so confusing, because there is a harsh turn whenever we enter some sort of fantastical realm in this film, and I think that the film's production design, cinematography, lighting, all these things just takes a massive jump up.
Yeah, yeah.
And it leaves me feeling like the parts that are filmed in the real world are just kind of like it's like too crisp.
I mean, it has
the color palette is like
it has that
TV sort of.
It's the digital photography issue.
Very much
is
so.
that there are obviously people who can do digital cinematography quite well. Yeah. Tim Burton in recent years has shown that he is not one of them.
Well, in all years.
Yes, yeah. That's a fair point actually. So yeah, I think the living world stuff is like just quite boring looking actually. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then you obviously get Tim Burton. The whole Tim Burton is back narrative comes from the production design. He has really harped on the fact that we are doing as much practically as we possibly can. There's no real like digital backgrounds or anything when we're in the afterlife. It's all real sets, and that's very refreshing and fun to look at. And all the gory body effects are real and everything.
Yeah,
and
they did that to those people.
And it's yes, that's right. They chopped that one guy in half and covered him in piranhas or whatever. But no, I mean that just makes the film more enthralling. Like it is physically there, and again, it feels like the kind of thing you would do if you were making this sequel in the 80s. Absolutely. Like they were initially planning on doing.
Yeah, and I think that where the gap between this still actually ending up feeling like a modern movie comes from the way that the filmmaking happens in the real world. Because it looks like it could just be from any other movie, which I think is where if this movie was made in. When did Beetlejuice come out?
1983.
Okay, yeah. If it was 4 years later, 5 years after that, I think there would have been a much more gothic tone to the real world. There would have been more canted angles and crazy, like looking up from people's feet and things. Where it's a lot of sky shots and two shots and nothing too fancy.
Yeah.
For especially the camera work and the lighting. Of the real world, but that it ultimately doesn't end up being a problem, because I think there's still a lot of funny stuff and a lot of good moments in the real world, and then all of that disappears when you go into the afterlife, and it is just everything you could want out of a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah,
which I think is why I'm very comfortable saying, after years of Tim Burton just trying to regain some sort of, I guess, sense of control over like what he wants to do.
Yeah, I mean,
this when you sit in the afterlife in this movie, you're like, well, this is exactly what you think of when you think of Tim Burton.
Exactly.
Like, and frankly, maybe at some of its best production design, best like crazy things going on in the background, like big sequences and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like he cares here, or as much as he has in the past, decade or so. Because if you really look at it,
about Dumbo,
he didn't care about like a lot of that stuff. Feels like Tim Burton is.
Hey, TV.
Beetlejuice is in our fucking TV.
That's the third one.
Oh, well, there he is.
Well, all right, we have to end the review, guys.
Okay, we'll see you. No, I mean, a lot of his recent output feels like he's just phoning it in and doing this CGI work and, doing, not really committing to what made him stand out in the 80s and 90s. And we're getting close to recapturing that here. And if we want to talk about, I mean, we should probably talk about Michael Keaton as the character. We can say it as
we were done. Yeah.
The bit's over. As the character of Beetlejuice.
Yes.
Who also feels like he has not dropped the ball at all in 30 years. I mean, he is like, he's doing all the bits again, and he's doing the affect and the voice, and he's making the off-color jokes. Like he's still maintaining the color of the character Beetlejuice.
Absolutely, and it's fantastic. I think my only complaint would be he doesn't actually get as much to do as I'd want.
Yeah,
like you'd think that. So the first movie, it's not quite established yet. You don't know that that Beetlejuice as the character obviously it's the thing that people are coming for, but like I thought that this movie was going to be more Beetlejuice than family.
I mean, you would imagine so, but like no, Tim Burton seems to have stuck to his thing in the first movie. It was like first movie's like 90 minutes. Beetlejuice shows up at like the 40-minute mark, and here this movie is an hour and 40 minutes, a little longer, and he shows up at like the 40-minute mark again, 45 minutes.
Yeah, and. So I really like him. I love his dynamic with his little minion guys.
With Bob, the shrunken head guys.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
And everything, the dynamic in the underworld. It's kind of hard to pin down, though. It doesn't really matter. So what is his role down there? Like, do the underworld police like him or not? Like, there are just a lot of like things going on. It ultimately doesn't like. I'm not too concerned about that. But also I think The side plot that I'm least interested in this movie, is Monica Bellucci.
Sure, well, it's also the one that is given the least amount of time,
and she's given the least development. She has the least lines. Like, there are good moments that she has. I love her putting herself together. That's one of the best sequences in the movie.
It's a really great introduction for her, and also you feel let down because
that's the best moment of her.
She doesn't like have any lines. Like, she shows up and she's like, "Oh, well, she's gonna like suck some guy's soul out," and she does.
Yes,
and then
and those are fun moments. I love
the effect is very good. And then
he watched a lot of Go-Gurt commercials, or no? What was the
Capri Sun?
Capri Sun, yeah. Respect the pouch.
Yes, exactly.
She did not respect the pouch. Or no, she did. The other people didn't.
And there's always just like good visual bit payoffs. Like Tucker, I remember a moment that you really enjoyed sitting next to me. I remember is when they go to investigate the crime scene of someone who has been soul sucked, and the chalk outline is it's just this like little blob on the floor that matches really the shrunken, shriveled body or whatever. It's really good.
Yeah, and that's where this movie is at its best, in those bits, in the moments. The overarching plot is mixed. It's all over the place.
It's kind of hard to follow too, like, especially if you're in that third act. Beetlejuice just shows up in every given sequence with no regard to who he was with the last time or where he was the last time.
That's kind of his thing.
That's kind of his bit, but also like it feels weird from a storytelling perspective.
Yeah. And also, by the time that you're in this third act, I felt like my brain was just so fried. I'm like, look, there's just gonna be a big climax in a church, and like, fair enough. Like, let's just have it happen.
Yeah.
I wasn't like yearning to see how are these storylines going to come together, because I was like, well, they're like all loosely connected at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's true.
And the Monica Bellucci thing is like, it doesn't feel that important by the end of the film.
It's kind of just like hand waved away in a way that, like, in that final 10 minutes or so, you're like, okay, got to check this one off. All right, she's going back to hell or whatever. Jenna Ortega boyfriend's going back to hell. And then we defeat Beetlejuice.
Yep.
Boom, boom, boom. Done. Wash your hands of it. Talk about Willem Dafoe quick, because he does like have a plot line. He's really fun.
He's very fun.
Like, if you pick the main storyline that we were talking about at the top, and then any single one of these side plots, I think you'd have a much tighter and better movie.
Yeah,
like, throw Monica Bellucci in there as the B plot. Throw Willem Dafoe in there as the B plot.
Sure.
I think you kind of have to choose one, and both are good. So I can kind of see where the difficulty is, and not wanting to drag out this movie and make it much longer, and still wanting all the fun stuff in there. Like, because he's this like actor cop who did his own stunts and died doing that. Who knew it was a live grenade? And he's doing all the things, and he's crushing coffee cups, and he's getting his line. He's giving a speech to the other officers, and he has his assistant like with the cue cards in the back.
It's very good.
There's just good bits throughout.
Yeah, and that's what I'll remember this movie for, is that it does harken back to a time when plot was not the focus. It was about the vibes, about the production design. It was about just being funny and zany and all over the place. And we think back to many of our favorite comedies from the 80s, even you with Airplane. The plot doesn't matter.
No.
It's just about these one-off memorable bits, moments of production design, single line deliveries. And I do think Beetlejuice has that, which is why I still recommend this movie, and especially think that it's a cut above any given insert major studio legacy sequel here, because it does feel like it actually is retaining the spirit of the original. It misses in some areas, as we were mentioning, with the cinematography and production design of the real world elements, but I think that's kind of it. It feels like kind of confusing and all over the place, but I also think that's kind of a good thing. At the end of the day,
I can see where you're coming from there. I just think
if this was like a straight laced down the line like focused Beetlejuice movie, you'd be like, oh, they kind of sanitized my Beetlejuice.
No, I see what you mean, but like, I'm not saying it needs to be like straight down the line, but like when I'm comparing it to that first movie, that first one felt like propulsive, like we were on we were on a track, and like it's like an amusement park ride. It's like there's weird things popping up all around you. You're not really sure what turn you're going to take next. Not so much. Whereas this one is like, we have 4 different tracks, and we have to move each cart a little bit.
That's a good point.
And we're like, well, it doesn't feel like I'm on a ride. It's very fun. I feel like we're just kind of like stopping and starting until eventually it's the end of the movie.
Yeah, I actually do agree with that. Yeah.
Also, on the point of this being a legacy sequel, do want to point out and sort of applaud this film for not having that weird sense of like importance that legacy sequels a lot of times have. Is like, the reverential material that we're returning to. Is like, no, like it very much feels like this is effectively what they would have done in a sequel from in the 80s, you know.
Age up Winona Ryder.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's everything I had. We were talking about the boyfriend plotline with Jenna Ortega, mostly because it's kind of boring.
It's kind of boring.
Dad plotline with Jenna Ortega, kind of boring. Like, I think she's quite underserved in this movie, actually.
She is, especially because she doesn't get a lot of wacky things to do. She is the straight man character.
That's right. She's like, ghosts aren't real.
Yeah. And like you're thinking, okay, Jenna Ortega's in a Tim Burton movie.
Yeah.
Like, she's gonna get some crazy shit to do. She doesn't really, actually.
No.
She's just kind of run around. I think she does fine with what she's given, but yeah, I would say if we're to rank how underserved the characters are, I think Monica Bellucci is at the bottom, and I think that that Jenna Ortega is also close down there. But I also like I get what they're going for with her being the straight man character, being the more in character. She's the more relatable character. But I think it's a little unfortunate, that by the end of the film, she's given a little more wacky things to do, especially in, like, the dance number and things.
Yeah, that's true.
But it doesn't, like, she doesn't internalize any of that to where, like, Winona Ryder, by the end of the first movie into this one, she's, like, all over the place doing crazy stuff. But, like, Jenna Ortega's she's that the whole time.
Yeah. Last thing I want to mention.
One
more thing before scores.
Sorry, everyone.
Ending, super weird.
Yeah.
Super weird ending. Because it is that we do the whole third act resolution, and then it's Winona Ryder's like, all right, I'm going to be there for my daughter. I'm going to be there for my family. And then it's like this dream sequence of her getting married to a guy that we've never met before, and then her giving birth, and then it's like a callback to the Beetlejuice baby bit.
Yeah.
And then Winona Ryder wakes up and it was a dream, and then Beetlejuice is there, but then she wakes up again, and it wasn't a dream. Yeah. Beetlejuice isn't there, and that's the end of the movie. It's weird.
I'm not exactly sure what that's supposed to mean. And I think that is a big part of why I think this movie loses some steam. We were talking a little bit about the messy structure, and that like by like the middle of the second act, you're like, I'm here, but I'm not quite following what's going on. But then by the end of the third act, you're like, well, I guess anything could happen.
Yeah,
like there's no clear forward momentum, as you were saying, for this film. It's like, what is the goal of any given character?
It's just
things just happen.
It's just sort of sloppily constructed at the end of the day, and each individual part is better than the sum.
Yeah. No, that's definitely true.
Yeah. So, Tucker, I'm gonna go a 6.7.
All right, I will go a 7.2.
Okay,
it's a good movie, and I think that it is one that I can easily recommend to people. This doesn't feel like just a cash grab, slopped out. Like
the farther you get away from it, you'll be remembering the funny bits, and that's exactly what this movie is.
Absolutely. So, if you have seen this movie and want to talk to us about it, you can leave comments. You can join our Discord. All of that. But thank you very much for watching, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.
The bird is back in town.
The bird is back. The bird is back in town.
They invited him back into Hollywood. Like, okay, you can make us $1 billion. All right, here you come, buddy.
It's all right.
He's never made $1 billion picture.
He's not. Well, yes, he has. Alice in Wonderland. His $1 billion picture is also his worst movie by a fucking country mile. That movie fucking sucks ass.
Why to make $1 billion?
Yeah. Well, also, I think if you adjust, you might be close if you adjust Batman and Batman Returns. But also, those probably didn't do.
Still boy math. Boy math is when you calculate 80s movies for inflation.
What's boy math? 411 worldwide to in 1989 dollars. No, it doesn't double, does it? It doesn't double.
Even if it did double, it wouldn't be million.
1989.
1900, 989.
Also, doesn't this not go up that far? I've had an issue. Oh, it does. Oh,
$1 billion.
$1 billion. Did Batman Returns make more? 411.
No,
it didn't.
Way less. Wow,
that's nuts. I mean, there was the whole controversy surrounding it, so I guess that checks out.
Oh yeah, where they killed someone on set.
Yeah, they killed Danny DeVito, shot him in the head.
No, that happened in Beetlejuice.
The security guard saw him coming up in the penguin costume and shot him.
What the fuck is that? What the fuck?
Bang, 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 bang.
You think they have live guns on the set of Batman Returns to protect?
Tim Burton insisted.
He's like, hey, we can't have people fucking around over here.
Yeah.
This is serious business.
This is serious business. Batman Returns is a very serious movie.
Yes.
He did begin in that movie.
Batman 2 is going to be the first Batman movie with a number in it.
I think they might. Well, yeah, the Batman Part 2.
They might. Well, that's sold number.
Yeah, I know. But it does have a colon in it. You
Part 2. I said there was a number in it.
There's a number,
actually.
But there would also be a colon. Carapolis. He was born in fucking Carapolis.
And that new movie from
you know his name,
Francis.
Yep, from Francis. He did it.
Frank Coppola.
Frank.
Everyone call him that? Probably.
Yeah. Probably his mother.
What?
I assume that's what she sounds like. Mrs. Coppola? Mrs. Ford Coppola?
Mother Ford Coppola.
The Madam Ford Coppola?
Mother Ford Coppola.
Frankie, I'm your mother.
Give me a flake.
Get out of the fucking jungle, Frankie. I don't care what Marlon Brando's up to.
Oh, God. Oh, Lord. She's that character from Monsters, Inc.
Yes, she is. She definitely is. You're gonna get malaria, Frankie.